What up, folks? It's Tony Wiggins here on a Thursday on Locked On Jaguars. The Jags are filling out their staff and only 7 games at home next year. I'll tell you why in just a second here on the Thursday edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, good people? Thank you for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day, making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. Of course, I am Tony Wiggins, the host of this wonderful show. And I got to let you guys know that today's show is brought to you by Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. Speaking of first, you make us your first listen here every day, and we really, really appreciate it. And we're free on all platforms. So make sure you find our podcast wherever you get your podcast. Hit that like and subscribe button as well. I want to talk about a few things today. Some stuff that has kind of organically come my way. Things that people have sort of been bringing up a little bit to me. And it's all about, first, the staff. I don't know how these guys are going to be here. None of us do. I just trust that Doug Pederson knows, and the fact that he's so exact and so direct about who he's going to get. He's getting guys that work with him in Philly. He's getting guys that he either played with or grew up or blew up with. Some of the guys were on the staff in the Super Bowl. It's just some things that people say sometimes that I wonder. I cover the team, and I've been watching the NFL closely, and people say things that I don't even know. I'm like, how could you possibly know that? Like, I'm not questioning you whether you should feel that way, but I'm always interested in how somebody comes to their conclusions. So I'll tell you about that, and I'm talking about mainly the coaching staff. 7 games out of the 10 next year, or 7 games out of the 17 will be played here in Jacksonville. 10 games, not here. One game. Of course, they went to a 17-game schedule, so it's either going to be 9 at home, 8 on the road, or 8 at home and 9 on the road. In the case of Jacksonville, it would be on a normal year without any restrictions. 8 in Jacksonville, 8 on the road, and then another one that's a home game overseas. How long are you guys going to think that that's a pretty good deal? I got a good idea of how long it's going to happen. I'll go back into also in segment 2 of why it happens. Segment 3, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you why some of these things that people say about who they should pick and what they should pick make absolutely no sense. Hopefully you'll laugh at this session, this segment, because when I actually decided I was going to do it, I was talking to somebody earlier, my man Demetrius Harvey, and I had him cracking up. So maybe I'll do it with the same animation and illustration, and you'll laugh too at some of the things you hear. But back to what we started to lead the show off with, and that is the position coaches. Press Taylor, I had a buddy of mine at Tic Tac Titan say, good luck with him. I have no idea what that means. I'll find out. But Press Taylor is going to have a role on the offense. Jim Bob Cooter, with an absolute brilliant name for a football coach, Jim Bob Cooter, is going to have a role on the offense as a passing game coordinator. Of course, we already know about Mike McCoy. There have been a lot of other coaches. I'm not going to read them all. You can Google them. I'm not going to read them all off here because we talked about Mike Caldwell yesterday, the defensive coordinator, and now the possibility of Gerald Andrews, I believe his name's, coming back from Miami, a former player here to coach defensive backs. And I heard that's a really good hire from a lot of people. But to go into too much depth about the position coaches, I have no idea how good a teacher these guys are. I have no idea, unless you just Google or go to Wikipedia, the relationship on how a lot of these guys cross paths. We make the assumption sometimes that guys always want to coach with guys who they coached with. Sometimes you want to coach or you want to have guys on your team that gave you problems. I can't remember who it was, but I remember a coach said, he got a job and he said, I had to hire this guy because every time we played him, it was hard. So they didn't have a real relationship other than the fact that going against each other, he knew he was a very formidable opponent. So he just said, if I ever get a team, that's how I want my defense to play, because I knew how hard it was, basically. And I'm paraphrasing, but I knew how hard it was for me to stop him. So sometimes I think we look too deep. But one thing that someone said, they said something about Mike McCoy, and they said he wasn't better than Shoddy. In fact, my man Chris said it. So I ain't gonna, act like you ain't in the room, Chris. But and Chris listens all the time, and he's, I consider him at least a social media friend, and we've been very social, and we have a lot of things in common. But I don't know how you could come to that conclusion that Mike McCoy is worse than Shoddy when you're judging one guy based on being a quarterback's coach, and then you're judging another guy mainly of what he did as a head coach. So I would tell you that even though we have a lot of discussions about nepotism and a lot of discussion about the good old boy network, I can tell you that a guy that goes from quarterback coach to offense coordinator to head coach, he's probably okay as a quarterback's coach. All right. And you would have to go back and look at the players that he worked with. And sometimes we fall into this trap when we go, oh, that guy was a Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer. Those guys were going to be good without him. That's not the point. The point is being around them and being in that working relationship. If you're not a guy that can work with them and they tell their coach they need somebody else, that's a bad thing. If you work with them and it's successful, it's a good thing, whether or not they're super talented or not. That means you know what it looks like. That means you know what you're supposed to do. I'm gonna pull my collar out here. I don't want to be looking all crazy on TV. But that means that you understand. I don't know if you taught him or he taught you, but either way, y'all watching me fix my collar. I'm looking like Lamont on Sanford and Son with my collar all jacked up. Ain't nobody tell me. Ain't not one of y'all told me that my collar was messed up on my shirt. And I'm sitting here trying to fix my collar here. That's going to be a little bit better. It's going to have to do, looking like Rollo. But anyway, look. And sometimes when you listen to this show, look, I know y'all hear about football. You're going to have to deal with this. There's some of this stuff you just going to have to deal with. We got a brother looking all crazy on here, and not one of you guys told me. But when you have a coach that's judged on the higher level of responsibility, it doesn't mean that he can't do things that you never saw him do. And when you're successful with the Peyton Mannings of the world, it doesn't mean that they would have just been successful anyway, which it probably does, but it does mean that you had something to do with it and you know what it looks like. So when you think you have a generational talent like Trevor, if a quarterback's coach was good enough for Peyton Manning or Phillip Rivers, he should be good enough for Trevor Lawrence, right? So I just don't want us to get into this thing where we constantly judge guys based on their worst either transgression in the past or their absolute worst visible moment as a coach. And we don't realize that maybe there are some things that they do very well. Noah Turner is the best example. Not a great head coach, but one hell of an offensive coordinator. Go look at all the running backs and look at their best season. All the running backs he coached, their best seasons was with Noah Turner. I don't know whether you're talking about Stephen Davis, Terry Allen, Emmitt Smith, going all the way back, LaDainian Tomlinson, Michael Turner, you name it, Darren Sproles, you go through Christian McCaffrey as of late, Frank Gore with the 49ers that 1 year. All of these guys' best, Ricky Williams down in Miami, all of these guys' best seasons came with Noah Turner as their coach. And I think that means something. So just because a guy fails as a head coach doesn't mean he can't be a good position coach. And so far, so good in terms of the Jaguars going out and getting guys. What we need to do is this. We need to see where those dudes come from and see who are free agents. Now, I know a lot of people are attaching Chandler Jones to Brenton Butler. I love that thought. I absolutely love that thought. And you should too, because it'll give you a veteran pass rusher. It'll be the second pass rusher that we've got from Arizona in his early 30s. And you know who the other guy was. So a lot of stuff to dig into, a lot of stuff to look around, and a lot of stuff that we all have to figure out what the expectations is. We got to just get rid of that hangover that was. Ain't nothing going to be worse than what was going on here last year. So that part you can rest assured. All right, so what we're going to do is talk about London, talk about the fact that there are only 7 home games In a year where I think there's a lot of enthusiasm, that's not necessarily a good thing. However, it does give you some chances to travel. We'll discuss all of those things here on a Thursday edition of Locked on Jaguars. I want to tell you all about Get Upside, man. What do I want to tell you about Get Upside? Get Upside is an incredible app that everyone who buys gas needs to know about. Get Upside is that app. You can get it on the App Store or on Google Play. And my listeners are earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. All you got to do is just download the app at one of those places. Use the promo code Touchdown for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up. Cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code Touchdown for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Now, some people who drive a lot are saving hundreds of dollars per year in cash back on, saving money with gas with the Get Upside app. And you can do the same thing. Don't you make that mistake to thinking that doesn't sound like a lot. You just think about it. Think about what you can do for $300 to $400 at the end of every single year. And that's how you have to look at it. So the promo code is Touchdown. The app is called Get Upside. Make sure you download it today in the Play Store or on Google Play. And I am here on Locked On Jaguars on a Thursday. Thank you guys for making us your first listen of the day. Now I want to discuss this London deal that came out that the Jaguars are headed back to Wembley Stadium this year after a hiatus from doing that a year ago mainly because of the COVID restrictions and the traveling. So the Jags will now be doing again. Once again, they'll be doing it again, going over to Wembley. And the thing about this time is that now that the NFL has gone to a 17-game schedule, that means one year you have 9 at home and 8 on the road. The next year you have 8 and 9. So in a normal year, when the Jaguars are always going overseas, that would mean 8 games at home, 1 on the road. And let me check it. When you have 9 on the road, the Jaguars would have 7 at home like they do this year. When you have 9 at home, the Jaguars would have 8 at home, and the other one would be with Wembley. So just a little backdrop for those that don't know, it's about revenue. If you divide the games into 16ths, right, 16 games before, in the old way when this was explained to us, you would think that each game would represent 1/16 of your revenue. The trip to London represented 11%. It's more than 1/10 of the Jaguars' revenue. So that's why it was so important, especially because of the local stuff. The Jaguars just weren't making local revenue. Now, when I say local revenue, I'm not necessarily talking about folks walking up and buying tickets. I'm talking about advertisements from Fortune 500 companies. I'm talking about suites being sold to Fortune 500 companies. All kinds of banners and naming rights, things that a lot of other teams in big cities have that the Jags don't. It seems like when this is always talked about, discussed, though, it somehow comes back on the fans as if it was something that they can't do. And that's where the national people have always gotten this wrong, especially those people that want to continue that chatter that at some point the Jaguars are going to leave Jacksonville. It's just not true, and they just don't understand it. So there's a lot about this that people don't understand. Fans don't like hearing about viability. I don't like hearing about viability, especially when the team has been losing. They've been atrocious for a long, long time. So the people that are responsible for actually making this team better, it seems like even though viability is a legitimate conversation, it shouldn't be coming from them because they haven't handled their business on the field in terms of management and structure and putting a team on the field that people can be proud of. And I think the fans automatically think, okay, well, if you handle that, then the product goes up and the value of it goes up and it draws more business and maybe Fortune 500 companies will come. So instead of always talking about it and doing all of these little things and taking our game away from us, why don't you just handle your business and do better? Now, I don't necessarily know if it would seem common sense would tell you that there's a correlation with all of those things. I can't tell you, I'm not smart enough to sit here. I don't know football economics like that to sit here and tell you that definitively that if the team had been better, they would have filled in some of those holes that they're missing in revenue. Common sense and street smarts kind of tells me you got a better shot at it doing it that way, and it's likely, and the likelihood that you'll be able to be more viable off the field is to be more better or more better on the field, right? So that gives you the idea that maybe, it's almost like you're shifting the blame and then we're losing a game. My point is this: when these games are made up or these agreements are made, they're usually done 2, 3, 4 years in advance. What happens if Doug Peterson turns this thing around and in 2 years they're like the Bengals, or they're like one of those teams that are chomping at the bit and they're chewing at the ankles, not the kneecaps like in Detroit, but they are really, really pressing uh, all of these really good teams, and everybody's starting to look at Jacksonville like they're a problem. They're coming, and enthusiasm's at an all-time high. But you've committed that game overseas. If you stretch that thing out over 3 or 4 years, what happens then? How do the fans feel about it then? I tell you, the only thing I can tell you to do to combat, and there's a group, the BCB and those guys, they already do it. To combat those things, find those games that are regionally close to you or that are in destinations where you would want to travel to. Save your chips up all year, and for the game that you're missing, get a group of people and y'all go to that game and represent the team on the road. It's the best thing I can tell you to get over the fact that you won't be seeing uh, the majority of you. You'll never see more games live as long as they have an agreement to go to London. And when they have games that are on the road, you'll never see the majority of the games or even half the games played in front of you here in Jacksonville. So I think at some point that'll get fixed. But and when people hit me up with this, I got to explain this to you because I understand the sentiment, but sometimes I don't think people realize how wrong they could be about something. So I'm going to give you an example. When folks hit me up and say, "Why is he worried about money? This team is doubled, more than doubled. When he bought the team for 750, 800,000, now the team's worth $2 billion. Why is he worried about? He has made money over a barrel." Okay, let me explain something to you. When Shah Khan bought this team, that's like buying a house in a neighborhood where the property value wasn't high, right? And then property value shot up just like they have right now all over the country, and Jacksonville was included. The valuation of the NFL has grown over the last couple of years. So the valuation of the team might be $2 million, and he only paid $800,000 for it or whatever. I'm just rounding the numbers off. So he has a 1.2 million in valuation. But realistically, whatever job he had when he bought the house, that's the same job he has, and he hasn't gotten a raise. You feel me? Follow me. If the same amount of revenue that you had when you bought your house is the same amount of revenue that you're getting now or close to it, and based on inflation, it's you live in the same way. Okay? Just because your house went up in value doesn't put any money in your pocket that you use on monthly expenses. You understand it now? So the only way you benefit from that valuation is to sell the team or to borrow against it. He doesn't have to borrow against anything. So you say, well, Wick, it doesn't matter. He's not making money. He still has the valuation and it's going up. So if he sells the team, it's like an investment. Yeah, but you know what? I have several businesses, and the way this works is this. Just because business A is making money and business B is making money, if business C is not losing money based on property, uh, the valuation of what the product is, but if I'm not benefiting in that business the way my competitors are or the other people who I'm in business with, it is a standalone independent business. It doesn't mean that just because the Jaguars aren't paying off the way he wants it to, that he's going to go borrow money from his bumper company and put it in the Jaguars to be able to sign free agents. Businesses have to be employed. I think that's probably illegal, but businesses they have to be here. This is what they have to be. They have to be separated and they have to have their own identity. He probably had to get them money from a bumper car. Okay, so if Shaw digs into his pocket and loans the Jacksonville Jaguars in terms of operating expenses $500 million, that's a loan from him to the team. That just doesn't look good in terms of what the NFL likes, because the NFL likes their managing general partners or their sole proprietors or the majority owners to be able to purchase the teams when they buy them, mostly in cash, not with loans and not with guarantees or lines of credit, and to be able to maintain based on revenue sharing and what has to go to the players and what has to go to management. And even if you break even, if your competitors aren't breaking even and they have more liquid cash to give signing bonuses to guys, and they have more things that they can do in terms of the stadiums and in terms of all of this, then you'll always be looking to try to increase that because you're not looking at the rest of your money. Shaq Connor is richer than Jerry Jones, but the Dallas Cowboys are twice as rich as the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's that entity in and of itself. And how can I make this entity stand tall with the rest of these entities in that business? Not my other business and not my private money, this one. And I think anyone that does business, they understand that. If you own 10 houses and 7 of them are making you money and 3 of them aren't because everything keeps going wrong with them, now you're always going to be liquid because you have that other money, but that's no reason for you to ignore those 3. You have to independently make those 3 stand on their own, just like you have the other 7 standing on their own. So just when people start to bring valuation into the argument, sometimes I'm like, I'm on your side, but you got to pipe that down a little bit because you don't really understand business if that's what you're doing. Okay, so with all of these teams in the playoffs right now, here's what I'm hearing. I heard this the other day, and it was the most ridiculous thing ever. I don't want Evan Neal. Look at Jamar Chase scoring all those touchdowns. Draft a wide receiver. I'm going to tell you why that's the dumbest, most stupid, ridiculous thing I've ever heard anyone say, and it's incredibly funny, and I'm going to use some guys throughout history to tell you why I think that's so whacked out. And I'll do it in just a second here in the third and final segment on a Thursday on Locked On Jaguars. BetOnline has you covered for this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs, right to the big game in a couple of weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, big trade today in the NBA, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live and real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is where the game starts. Locked On Jaguars is where you start every day and make us your first listen. I am Tony Wiggins, your host. All right, third segment. Hearing a lot of crazy stuff, so I'm going to get wild and crazy right back at you. Randy Moss was one of those wide receivers that I saw back in the day that I went, wow. I mean, unreal, right? So based on that, with the logic that some people use about the draft, the Jaguars should take a wide receiver because Randy Moss was all that. You know what? Jerry Rice was so good. We're going to get me a wide receiver. Let's take Garrett Wilson. Not to mention that Garrett Wilson ain't Randy Moss and he ain't Reggie White. And I'm going to tell you right now, in this draft, there ain't no Jamar Chase. And if you find one, you can't tell me anybody that thought that prior to draft night. No, if you find a guy, if you find a guy, if you get a wide receiver in the second round that turns out to be Davante Adams, who is the best receiver in the NFL right now, in my opinion, yeah, ahead of Chase, and yeah, ahead of Cooper Kupp, Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in the league. You picked him. If you pick Davante Adams and he turns out to be that, then great. But I'm going to tell you something. Davante Adams in his first year or two wasn't the same Davante Adams you see now. But if you pick a guy number one, now you're going to expect him to be Jamar Chase. Let me explain something to you. Those guys do not grow on trees. And just because it's not as if you can just go pick a wide receiver and he's going to do what that guy did. These guys are individuals. They're not robots. It's not like, okay, just pick that and we're going to put some quarters in his back and he's going to run out here like a robot and do the same thing that the guy at his position did last year. It doesn't work that way. You know how great Deion Sanders was? Get me a corner with the first pick so he'll be the best corner ever. Does not work like that. Lawrence Taylor changed the game. We're going to get Lawrence Taylor. Take Aiden Hutchinson or take Thibodeau. Doesn't work like that either. They might not be Lawrence Taylor. They might not be. Is Josh Allen Lawrence Taylor? If that's the case, I'll say take Evan Neal. He's the next Walter Jones. That ain't true either, but it just doesn't work that way. And so many times it's a copycat league. And I've heard people say, why would you draft a defensive tackle? Name the last time a defensive tackle was the reason the team won the Super Bowl. It might be Sunday with Aaron Rodgers, with Aaron Donald. But thinking that you look at the success or the failures of somebody else at these certain positions and think that determines who you pick this year is literally the dumbest thing I've ever seen, because these guys are not the same just based on position. Now, you can question whether, like it's a no-brainer, right? Joe Burrow was good, so you pick Trevor Lawrence, but that's not why they picked Trevor Lawrence. They picked Trevor Lawrence because it was Trevor Lawrence, because if that wasn't the case, they'd take Kenny Pickett number 1 overall this year, or the Jaguars would have 15 teams trying to trade up for him. It just doesn't work that way. You have to look at the guy as an individual and imagine what he can do at this level and how he can help your team. And if when you got the number 1 pick, you want to see him do it for 12 to 15 years. That's what. You don't even pay attention to all the situational stuff. Do that later. At the number 1 pick, take the guy you think is going to be the best player. And this is a day where in a few hours you're going to find out who made the Hall of Fame. Take the guy you think is the most likely to end up being the guy that on the Thursday before the Super Bowl, we're sitting here after his 12-year career and after another 5 years of waiting, that 17 years from now, we think he has the best chance to be the guy we're sitting here waiting to see if he made it in the Canton. That's who you take. It's not even rocket science. The easiest pick in the draft is the first one, because you don't have to wait to see what anybody else did. And because you're picking first, you're probably so bad, you should not give one damn what position he plays. You ain't good enough when you've won 4 games in 2 years to sit here and cherry pick a position and talk about positional value. Boy, if you don't take the best player on that board and just say whatever, and then now round 2, we'll start worrying about shaping our team. But right now, we want the alpha. We want numero uno. It's not rocket science. At some point, I said it yesterday, the Jaguars have to get guys that are in the top 10 of the league at their position. When you watch the Super Bowl or you watch the big game this week, you're going to see guys that are either in the top 10 or pushing it. Right? The Bengals and the Rams' third receiver would be the Jaguars' best wideout. Tell me I'm lying. I'm not. That's the kind of stuff you need to fix. And that's the kind of stuff you need to change. And you ain't sitting here fixing and changing that stuff thinking about all of this other crap. You better pick the best. You got the number 1 pick. You walk on draft night. Where is it? Vegas this year? Where's the draft? I think it's you leave the draft with the baddest ass dude that had on a suit. That's who you leave with. Period. Point blank, end of discussion. If you want to make some money on the big game, make sure you tune into the Locked On Bets podcast, the Locked On Bets with your boy Q and Lee Sterling, because they're going to give you all the information you need that's going to make you have a chance. Now, I love those 4 and 5 team parlays. You start doing 6, 7, and 8, and you're trying to get lucky. You can throw a little change there. But scale that thing down, man. Hit you 4 or 5 and put you a little bit more in it and get paid. Locked On Bets podcast is found wherever you get your podcasts. And you need to like and subscribe. All right, big game is in a few days. We got one more show until we see who's going to be crowned the champion. Y'all are champions in my book because you join me here every day on Locked On Podcast and make me your first listen. You guys do what champions do. Take care of each other, and we'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.